Hey, Toucan Sam, how would you make milk more fun?
Why, with Fruit Loop cereal straws.
Nostalgia is something that most of us experience at least once in our lives. Whether it be seeing an old picture, listening to a song you grew up with, or watching old boomerang bumpers, you're bound to find something that brings you the feeling of nostalgia. For me personally, when I think of nostalgia, things that immediately come to mind are Windows XP, early 2000s commercials, and Toontown. Released to the public in June 2003, Toontown Online was an MMORPG developed by Shell Games and Disney's virtual reality studio. The plot of the games consisted of players creating their own custom characters called Toons. There were a variety of species to choose from, which included cat, dog, pig, bear, duck, rabbit, mouse, monkey, and horse. The goal of the game was to fight corporate robots referred to as cogs. There were 4 variations of cogs: Cellbots, Cashbots, Lawbots, and Bossbots. You might be wondering, since it's a kid's game, how are you supposed to fight them? Well, Toons had gags, which were essentially your arsenal. There were different gag types, but for the sake of brevity, I won't go over all of them. Also, you had an HP meter, of course. However, in Toontown, you had laugh points. Starting off with 15 and having a maximum of 137, you could increase your laugh points by doing things like tasks, fishing, golfing, racing, boss fights, or gardening. Speaking of boss fights, there's one for each cog type. For Cellbots, there's the VP, which is the easiest of the boss battles. Following that, you have the CFO, then the CJ, and finally the CEO. And obviously, each boss gets progressively harder than the last. There are also a few places you could travel to, those places being called playgrounds. And since the game was owned by Disney, most of their names were based on Disney characters. One example is something like Minnie's Melody Land. Also in Toontown Online, when you went to a playground, you would be able to see the character itself walking around. Unfortunately though, on August 20th, 2013, Disney announced that they would be shutting Toontown down on September 19th, just a month later. While Disney officially stated that the closure was because they wanted to shift their development over to games like Club Penguin, others say that the game closed due to the fact that the business model of a subscription-based RPG no longer worked. But a few days after, a private server named Toontown Rewritten was announced, and ever since September 19th, 2014, the game has been open to the public. There, now you know what Toontown is. Personally, I started playing Toontown in 2008 when I was 4 years old. Unlike many people who've played, I didn't get into the game from TV advertisements. Rather, I found Toontown through my brother playing it. But since free-to-play accounts only allowed 1 Toon per account, our parents got us a subscription. From then on, I spent hundreds of hours just, well, grinding the game out. A lot of memories that I have with Toontown are from during the summer. I can't tell you how many nights I spent staying up until what felt like 3 a.m. just playing the game. When Toontown Online was still around, one thing that I often did was play the game in phases. I sometimes would go 4 or 5 months at a time where I wouldn't play it, but then there were other times when I would exclusively play for hours every day. I'm not sure if this necessarily only happens with Toontown for me though. Anyway, one thing I really miss about the original game is my first ever Toon, Reggie. While I don't have a lot of pictures of him, I still vividly remember the times where I would grind in the hopes to get Reggie to 137 laugh. But obviously I never ended up doing so since there just wasn't enough time for me to. To be honest, looking back, I'm not really sure if I'd even want to finish the game. I really feel like the repetitive grinding would have gotten boring for me. Another thing about Toontown Online that I wanted to mention were Toontown music videos, or more commonly referred to as TTMVs. Essentially following the same concept as an AMV or anime music video, someone would find a song and create their own music video for it with TV or movie clips. However, with Toontown, people would create the music video in-game. Weirdly enough, I found a lot of music that I still really like from these videos. But looking back, some of the editing in them is just really funny to me. Growing up, I thought the different transitions and effects were the best thing I'd ever seen. Nowadays, I kind of realized that most of them had just found out about Sony Vegas and were trying every effect and transition they could. Not to disrespect these, of course, I still think that, for the time anyway, they were pretty decent. I'm just looking at them from the perspective I have now. While TTMVs helped me with finding a lot of music that I still really enjoy, the most influential thing about Toontown, to me anyway, were the content creators I'd watch. I'm sure many of you have watched or at least heard of Quackity before, right? Well, I remember watching him back before he had 5,000 subscribers, and I'm very happy for him. His channel has gotten ridiculously huge, and it's a little hard to process. While I don't watch his modern content as much as I used to, I still love to look back on his classic Toontown videos. Another content creator who I grew up watching was Coach Zucchini. Now, if you've played Toontown for a while, I'm sure you know who Coach is. For those who don't, Coach Zucchini, or Coach Z for short, was someone who gave tips and tricks on playing Toontown. But I say he's most arguably known for the rants he would go on and how he would sometimes legitimately yell during these. He never really inspired me in the aspect of content creation, but he definitely did help me improve with strategizing in the game. Overall, a pretty alright channel. Next is the most influential creator I watched, Random Toon. I'm just gonna preface this next part by saying I might ramble a bit, so please excuse that. Random Toon, or Michael, was my favorite content creator. I initially found his first ever Random Toon Show series, which started back in 2010, and his content had only improved since then. Unfortunately though, he passed away on June 24th, 2018. It was a shock to the Toontown community and was incredibly sudden. The main takeaway from his passing, for me anyway, was that his channel just felt so unfinished. He had so many projects he was working on, and it's odd to think that they'll never be finished by him. But anyway, I'm rambling. Michael's videos inspired me heavily when wanting to create my own content. If you've been watching me for a while, you can see that my very early videos share a lot of the same traits that his did. Not only that, but Michael got me into TF too. And if you're a regular viewer of mine, you'd know how big of a deal that was for me. I'm nearly at 4,000 hours in the game, and it's all because of Michael. I also wanted to let one of Michael's friends talk about him, so here's Chazarz.
I used to gush about Bo's new specials with Michael, so it's great to have a great Toontown friend, like Stabs, to pour liquid everywhere with.
I don't want this video to feel sad or that it's meant to be depressing, so I'll move on. But if you haven't already, please go check out Random Toon. I'll make sure to leave a link to his channel in the description down below. While I'm very thankful that we have private servers that took Toontown's place when it shut down, there are still a few things that I miss about the original game. First and foremost is the community. While Toontown still has a somewhat active community, it definitely feels like it's gotten substantially smaller than in its glory days. But to be fair, when I played the game growing up, I never focused on how many people were playing it or if the game was dying out. I was just having fun with it. Moving on, another thing I miss about the original game was the fact that when playing on a 16:9 monitor, the game would stretch out, not losing any quality though. You can still achieve this somewhat, but you have to run your whole monitor in a lower resolution and meh, it doesn't replicate the effect as well. But another private Toontown server named Corporate Clash gives you the ability to run in a stretched 4:3 resolution. However, the game's just a bit too different for my liking, and I don't think it would make a lot of sense to play it just so I could play in stretched 4:3. Finally, I really just miss the feeling of everything being new. I'm about 123 left on my current main tune and have pretty much done everything in the game. And with little to no new content being put out right now, it's hard to continue to play other than for the sake of nostalgia. It's been a while since I've genuinely felt like there was something new to try out in Toontown. But to be fair, the current development team for Toontown Rewritten, or TTR, are volunteering for this work. Since Toontown Rewritten is free to play, no one on the team is making money from it. So I'll be a bit more fair and understanding in the regard of content taking a while. So, as previously mentioned, Toontown Rewritten is a private server that was created by Joey Zilkowski almost immediately after Toontown's closure. And it's really good, to be honest, but it doesn't invoke the same feelings as the original game did. I'm not sure what it is that makes me feel this way. Perhaps it's that I'm older now and just don't enjoy the game as much as I used to, or maybe it's that I know it isn't the original. Nonetheless, I still feel that Toontown Rewritten is a really good replacement for TTO since it's about as close as you can get to it. Actually, that's not entirely true. Around a year ago, another private server finally opened up after years of waiting, Toontown Archive. While it's still very much in development, Toontown Archive does a fantastic job of recreating the original 2001 and 2003 builds of Toontown Online. While I personally didn't play the game then, it's still very much interesting to see how different each build is and how the game progressed. If you want to play either TTR or Toontown Archive, I'll make sure to leave a link in the description for both games. Well, that's Toontown, a game that's very near and dear to me. This game honestly was a huge part of my childhood, and I'm glad that I was able to grow up with it. I'm also really glad that others out there have had similar experiences to mine. Early 2000s nostalgia is something I also really enjoy. Recently, I've been going through my nostalgia playlist, which consists of old commercials and ads from 2005 through 2012. If any of you want a link for it, let me know down below. Also, did any of you have any childhood games you played? Feel free to leave a comment telling me what game it was and if it had any impact on you. Thanks again for watching, everyone. And thank you to Chazarz for contributing his part of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, feel free to subscribe and leave a like. I'll see you guys next month. Bye.
My books are in boxes, the drawers are all empty now. The house never looked so clean. Why aren't you scared? Why aren't you terrified of losing? Honey, don't you see?